share interesting research and thought thinking makings, I think. So it's not going to work, is it? Now it's going to work. And it's my absolute pleasure also to introduce Dr. Erika van Greef. Erika was we asked her very early to facilitate a paper session. She said yes. She's coming from South Africa, very far away. And Erika is a curator, author, and co-founder of the African Fashion Research Institute, which she's co-leading with Lesiba Mabitsela, who's standing up this morning already because he's a member of the Anshan Circle. And she works collaboratively to promote redress and invite the decolonial reimagination of contemporary African fashion, with projects spanning museums, creative platforms, education institutions, and grassroots spaces. She has lectured and published widely and is currently a research fellow with UNISA, South Africa. Welcome, Erika, and I hand over to you, and I think you will introduce the speakers indeed. Yes. Right?
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a bit of an echo? There is I'm sort of also hearing a little bit of the echo. I'm wondering if we want to, I think it's because we're recording. That's better. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And can you all hear me? Yes, good? It's quite low. Should I be speaking a little bit louder? Yes, please. Thank you. Yes, thank you. A very warm welcome to Reconnecting Fashion Education, Decentering, Collaboration, and Circularity. And I think words are powerful. They can also become seeped out of their meaning, as we heard from Sandra this morning. But I think they also become more powerful when they're demonstrated, illustrated, elaborated. So I'm hoping that today's paper exchanges share a journey with us. We're a little bit delayed in our time, so I don't want to take too much time to set the scene. I think we're broadly welcoming into this room a set of knowledges and a set of exchanges, and I think I'm going to give the 15 minutes, hopefully 15-minute presentations, time to share, and then at the end I think we're going to open it up and then we'll come sit in the front and maybe just open that up for questions. So I think sometimes these interdisciplinary cross-panel papers allow for other kinds of thoughts to happen, but I'm not going to break the 4 papers with questions in between. So do hold your questions, and I'm sorry to kind of impose that on you. And then I thought, so often we get to know one another through our professional personalities. So I have asked all of the speakers this afternoon to also just share something about what we won't know about you, what we don't know about you, because our bios are out there. That's the kind of public face, and that's how we get to know and circulate. So I thought I'd set the scene, and I'd say, what is something that you wouldn't know about me? And there are a few people in the room that might know this about me, but I'm a twin. I'm an identical twin. So I have a twin sister, and her name is Veronica, and I'm maybe just wanting to welcome Veronica into the room with me, because absolutely, as a twin, it's a really, really close embodied relationship. And so just maybe thinking about relationality, how we relate to others, thinking about that from my perspective as a twin is kind of like what that might bring into the room. So something that you wouldn't know about me that maybe changes how we relate in the room, and I think also just with each other, how we relate. So we're not just the academics, the knowledgeable ones in front of the podium. We're also human beings. So I'd like to, and a very, very special and very warm welcome, I'd like to introduce Sherlyn, Kipos, and Feliz to come up. It's quite an important moment to welcome you also back in Berlin. Sherlyn and I met, and it was maybe 12 years ago here in Berlin. So it's 14 years ago, so it's a very important occasion to welcome you. And you're going to, I think, be able to speak this question of what is it that we're navigating, how do we navigate through the classroom, and maybe also just if you would like to have a word and tell us something that we may not know about you.
Okay, some kind of personal thing other than my bio, professional bio. I used to practice yoga for many years, and 2 years ago I'm injured because of practicing yoga, and it was a big loss in my life that yoga was quite instrumental for my life, because I'm an upcycler designer for more than 12 years as well, apart from my academic studies, and all these philosophies and practices of yoga was actually guiding me in my design. So it was a big loss, and this year I started to re-practice yoga again. I try to heal myself. Yeah. You want to say something about it?
Actually, I don't have any interesting personal side apart from my academic career, I think. Just I simply interested in photography, and that's all.
Okay, so I have to hold it the paper is about fashion education is a kind of pedagogical view. I think I have to go from there. So we would like to include some reflections and case studies on how fashion design education in Turkey has shifted from a discourse of sustainability to a paradigm of circularity in the process of this ethical transformation of the fashion system, and how fashion can adopt a more responsible attitude in the face of social and global crisis. We all know the devastating impacts of globalized fashion industry, especially with the prevalence of linear growth-based character of the system. Adopting make, use, dispose model is naturally waste generating. Even the definitions like sustainable, green, fashion, or circular economy would result in greater efficiencies in material and energy use, but at the end they may cause further growth and expansion of the industry, because at the moment circularity also become a kind of permission to buy. Degrowth in that aspect can be a restorative way of shifting the focus of prosperity from economic growth to protecting the world's ecosystems and enhancing well-being. And in the morning, of course, we know Zander Nissen's manifesto. We once again remembered the growth in the fashion system, and defashioning the system tends to be framed in terms of two different perspectives for us. First, through downscaling, not through its only economic dimension, but also creating a kind of possibility to create more systemic change on larger scale, as Nielsen referred as capital F with Fashion now, because here the impact is becoming larger, and to optimize the most impactful part of the system is instrumental for us. And the second, I think, is more easier, that adopting a kind of slow and local, by encouraging smaller and local initiatives that aim to develop alternative value systems. In that case, slow fashion business paradigm can prioritize quality over quantity, local over global, which can allow production of transparently and fairly products, and also for longer use, and products with more powerful sensualities can actually be created through that system. Of course, in regards to paradoxical coexistence of fashion and slowness, which Clark was also asking, is it an oxymoron or a promise for the future? Intriguing question appears here as, how can a fashion designer exist within slow fashion in the current paradigm of fast fashion system? In the appropriation of in the integration of sustainability into fashion education, that we can define two models here. First, through appropriation of students to the professional world and society, that which is actually framing them in the big F fashion capital system, and making young designers aware of challenges and opportunities, because at the end, especially in the case of Turkey, they will be mostly employed in this system. And they could have the power to transform the system, that within the system. The second line is, for us, is more instrumental, of course, being more critical, transformative, restorative, with respect to the role of academia. And we all know that this recognition of this area as a kind of epistemology is mostly driven by the research and expertise of us academics. Here, the transformation from a conceptual fashion since 90s to adopting a more responsible character, of course, following the design trajectory of the period, is instrumental to consider as well. The inclusion of sustainable fashion in the development of curriculum happens in three ways: through new educational programs and departments, through courses specific to the field, for example, open elective courses, or through briefs for adopting the responsible and ethical design approaches within the scope of the design studios, as fits to our case. In regards to changing role of designers, we have to remember fashion's potential to act as an agent of societal change, as well as their, of course, critical role, and this is well aligned with the new roles projected for fashion designers. Here, design plays a crucial role in building a more regenerative fashion system, and designers aren't just aesthetic providers, but rather they are becoming more multidisciplinary problem solvers, responding to social and ecological vulnerabilities. Designers, of course, adopt this critical role by developing their intersectional thinking capabilities, by incorporating environmental concerns with ethical and societal aspects, and through adopting a kind of ethical questioning practice by proposing viable or radical alternative ideas to take us beyond what already exists. In regards to developing course contents within fashion's complex relationship with the Anthropocene, two tendencies are prevailing here that we borrow this from Alice Payne and Clive Hamilton's terminology. First, adopting Promethean skills, implementing environmental solutions with a more techno-optimistic approach in line with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, mostly for developing clean production techniques, and we too often see and experience this in the industry. And through reacting to the growth-oriented industrial system by clinging to slow and crafted designs. In that case, we refer to Soterian skills, that by recalling the Soteria, the maintenance, the goddess of the maintenance. Designers increasingly adopt interdisciplinary approaches by collaborating with positive sciences, focusing on circular design principles, in particular to integrate bio-design practices into fashion design. And when we come to Turkey's position within the Eurocentric character of the fashion education system, of course, despite the Eurocentric character of global fashion education, there are remarkable developments in sowing the seeds of the colonial fashion system, and it seems that this conference will shed an important light to see the effect of this transformation. Still, we are seeing it. Integration of sustainability into fashion education in Turkey also presents an intriguing case because Turkey has a very powerful inherited textile and craft tradition based on Anatolian culture. And since 1970s, the know-how and expertise of manufacturing industry and integration of the industry to the commercial markets in the global circulation of the products is becoming very dominant. There is a slow fashion society since 2018, 2017, and civil fashion society is developing and growing. And due to the Green Deal agreements, because we are the suppliers to European countries, there's an increasingly sustainable and circular transformation of the manufacturing industry. So with this frame, we would like to present two projects as a paradigm of circularity and responsibility. The project entitled Ready to Rewear, Exploring a Circular Fashion System, was developed as a circular design paradigm, as we take the circularity as a roadmap for degrowth. In particular, we aim to create an awareness of the environmental impacts of global textile and clothing waste that challenges planetary boundaries and social justice, thus creates waste colonialism, since the global south has not only become the sweet shop of the global north, but also its wasteland. These kind of environmental problems are taken to study by students, such as carbon footprints of textile manufacturing, pollution, climate crisis, deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and threat to biological life of oceans and rivers. In the process, in the course of the studio, screening documentaries and taking critical responses through visual research from students was very instrumental in creating an awareness to the problems. Within the contextualization of the project, 3 collaborative routes have taken follow, such as design with nature, design with people, and design with the industry. And in the frame of these routes, students adopted circular and activist design methodologies, such as the methodologies by turning waste into value, or by innovating new materials, not existing with the existing material, not satisfying with the existing materials, or by consulting to more social and just design system, such as participatory design, activist design, or adaptive design for a more inclusive approach.
One of the collaborative routes is design with nature, which refers to designers collaborating with living systems to create sustainable materials. Biodesign, plant-based dyeing, and eco-printing techniques are embraced by fashion designers as well. In biodesign, living organisms have the ability to sense, respond to external stimuli, adapt, grow, and change, and become strong agents of change throughout the design process. In the frame of our project, we have organized 3 seminars on sustainable materials, biomaterials, biodesign principles delivered by professional designers. One of these reminded us the designer assumes a kind of alchemist and mediator role, not satisfied with the materials at hand, and adopting a design process starting from the material. And here you can see a project example on natural dyeing and ecological printing. Actually, the students found it challenging to manage this scientific process. Instead of creating new material, they choose to color and pattern the existing fabric with nature. And fashion's unfair system includes modern slavery, sweatshop conditions, worker exploitation, gender and racial discrimination, and waste colonialism. As a result of globalism and exclusion of local cultures, values, and economies, social justice is getting more fragile, and sustainable and ethical solutions are largely limited to privileged populations in global south and the global north, and the global south is affected disproportionately by climate crisis, biodiversity loss, water scarcity, and pollution. As a part of this studio course, Hakan Karaosman conducted an online seminar on social integration and inclusion in global supply chains, and he addressed creating a just transition in the system. Circularity needs to be extended to cultural and social levels as well. Integrating tacit knowledge of craft practices into design process can promote the regeneration of ecosystems, the maintenance of biocultural diversity, and holistic well-being. And in this project, with an aim of empowering women and respecting local culture in Iran, designer made use of local system handcrafts. And as an example of adaptive clothing, this collection designed for people with disabilities ignored by the fashion industry. And social inclusion, diversity, and pluriverse can be achieved through fashion activism as well. And as an example of design activism, this collection offers a craftivist and ecofeminist approach for ensuring solidarity of women. And by acting as sustainable mediators, fashion designers can positively influence mainstream business models. Due to the active role of Turkey's manufacturing industry in global fast fashion supply chain since 90s, enhanced design skills required by fast fashion systems are well developed. And in-house sustainability, diversity, and social inclusion departments have adapted these skills to circular and sustainable transformation of the industry, and their sustainable activities are integrated in design and innovation methodologies through various partnerships, including universities. And in our project, we collaborated with two industry partners about for fabric supply and knowledge exchange and production. And this upcycled collection of pre-consumer waste tries to create a circular economic model from men's shirts. And this is another upcycled collection of post-consumer waste. And this course was also supported by the lectures of professionals and designers from the industry with seminars and workshops. And in the frame of communicating and presenting the projects, we collaborated with the Department of Cinema and Digital Media, and here you can see scenes from one of the selected films.
For the second project, which is a switch to responsible design paradigm from sustainable to circularity, we developed a project entitled A Responsible Fashion Practice, Clothing as a Hypermedium in Risk Society, which we seek a new role and meaning of clothing in risk society. Based on the modernist thinker Ulrich Beck's idea of risk society, a language of clothing that resists the fragilities of body in modern society is sought. The inspiration for the project was derived from the need to create an awareness and develop a creative response to the February 6 earthquakes that affected 11 provinces of Turkey this year. We wanted to address the needs of people suffering from inequalities, isolation, trauma, homelessness, oppression, social disintegration, disruption, and disorder due to global crisis, socio-political risks like wars, what happened in Ukraine, for example, epidemics, migration, displacement, and everyday life risks of the metropolis, along with the natural disasters. As a response to these risks, of course, the language of dress has been transformed into a kind of hyper-clothing in the form of protective shelter, a defensive armor, a portable environment, an interactive ambient, or a collective experience. The students are asked to design a responsible fashion collection based on these conceptual frames. And in addition to that, a paradigm of the list of methodologies and guidance were also given. Here, I would like to address Strauss, who referred to the potential of developing this kind of humanitarian projects. She said, introducing new contexts for fashion designers to students, such as the effects of natural disaster on specific community, can facilitate shifting and reattuning in fashion awareness, sensibilities, and skill sets from personal curiosity or career concerns to self-preservation and community well-being. Due to the interdisciplinary nature of the project, which necessitates an interaction between architecture, fashion, art, science, and design, some workshops and seminars are organized through the contribution of professionals and academics from these fields. If you look at some examples from the projects, this collection offers a nest that overcomes physical and social trauma of the earthquake. This is an example providing a protective environment against tsunamis with this inflatable and detachable structure. This student developed a protective and reactive clothing against femicide, a kind of more activist project she developed. This is also responsive clothing against sexual violence and transphobic hate crimes. This is also inspired by LGBTQ plus activists. This collection also offers a protective response to the community. This project is developed as a response to the terrorist attacks happened in Istanbul last year in Beyoğlu. And the student designed a protective yet stylish clothing like an armor. Lastly, here the clothing acts as a hygiene station, addressing the risk of diseases such as dysentery of typho following the earthquake. So as final words, we would like to conclude in transition from a sustainable fashion education, a paradigm to a responsible one, circularity or circular existence of fashion system plays a vital role, fostering a symbiotic relationship between human and nature. And in this research, this is reflected by studio projects that are the outcomes of a range of transdisciplinary practices contributed by students, mentors, nature, people, and industry partners to create an ideal mutual learning. But because here, the ones who are learning was not students, but we are all learning from each other to challenge the preconceptions about the role of fashion system in regard to society and planet. And this is achieved by encouraging by critical thinking and ethical questioning among students and educators. Also, we try to, of course, develop an environment at which fashion system and education could act as an agent to restore and rebuild the system, thus in tune with the conference theme, Defashioning Education. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. I mean, really sort of the question of fashion as a humanitarian project. I think that's such a good takeaway for us to think about, this fashion as a humanitarian project. Can we think fashion from a very different place? So yeah, from Izmir University, thank you so much. It's a question that we might think about, the long-term impacts of these student-driven projects. So thank you so much for your contribution, and for now we'll be joined later. Thank you. And I'm going to invite Jennifer Barrett and Gail Cattrall, and sort of from this kind of really rich space of fashion education in Turkey. We're then moving to Northumbria University, and the question of circularity, moving into like the sort of decentralized, and so really sort of thinking critically sort of from Northumbria University, and a very warm welcome to you. While we're waiting, we do want to know something that nobody knows about you.
Hi everybody, I'm Gail Cantrell from Northumbria University. When Erica asked me to think about something that was personal to me, I thought for a moment, and then it occurred to me that my journey towards crafting, sewing, reuse and repair came really at the age of 9, when I was looked after before and after school by Hildegard Matheson, who was an amazing woman who was my grandmother's age and was our crossing lady, kind of like a lollipop lady, we call them in England. And she used to make the most amazing patchwork quilts, but also crafted tiny little teddy bears and mice that she gave out to all of the children who crossed the road every time they were on the way to school. And she taught me to sew and to do patchwork and quilting and to make these little animals. And she was one of the kindest people I've ever met. And it feels really appropriate. She was from the Black Forest. It feels appropriate that I'm here in Germany remembering her. That's how my journey towards working with textiles began. So it feels really precious to be here, and thank you, Matty, for everything.
Mine's not so sentimental. So the only thing I could think of, well, it actually probably is that I got a puppy, and he's gorgeous. So if any other dog people want to talk to me later, then I will happily show you pictures of my darling little boy.
She's not joking.
No, I've got hundreds and thousands of them. So yeah, we can sit later and just do that. So
Okay.
there you are.
We want to introduce ourselves as we delve into the topic of decentralisation of the fashion industry, with a specific focus on increasing accessibility to fashion education in higher education institutions in the northeast of England. We'll also touch on commissioned research that has informed but also highlighted our approach. To tie it all together, we'll showcase a programme that's been in development since 2008, designed to promote creative education and regional growth in the creative industries. As educators in the northeast of England, we firmly believe in the positive impact of creative education and what it can the impact it can have on local communities. We believe that decentralisation is key to achieving degrowth, and that focusing on regional specificity can facilitate responsible fashion practices. This approach starts with pre-16 education and involves collaboration between schools, HE institutions, community groups, SMEs, and industry partners to promote creative communities through a holistic framework. Our take on degrowth doesn't negate the existence of the fashion industry, but instead encourages a localised and supportive version of it. We see a future in rebuilding our creative communities. As Jason Hickel defines it, degrowth stands for a rebalancing of income and resources, a reduction of inequality, decolonisation of both lands and peoples, about reciprocity and care, centred around human flourishing and ecological stability, rather than the constant accumulation of capital. So, who are we? Over the course of the last 8 years, our partnership, Northumbria University and the Northeast organisation TICE, has developed into a natural collaboration dedicated to fostering the growth and development of aspiring fashion students. Our focus has been on addressing the unique obstacles and uncertainties that are faced by young people who are considering pursuing fashion as a viable educational path. Through a series of events at Northumbria, we've encouraged dialogue between schools, industry, higher education and the third sector, connecting these dots between these stakeholders, allowing opportunity for reflection and collaboration. Our aim is to support young people with fair access and equal opportunities in the fashion industry, and more broadly the creative sector, ultimately working towards a more decentralised vision. First of all, we're looking at this from a Northumbria perspective and the research that has been developed to support our work. So as I said, we're from Northumbria University. We're located in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. It's around 40% of our students are from traditionally low participation backgrounds. 55% of them are from the local area, and 63% say in the region for employment. We've done amazingly well in the last couple of years, receiving all kinds of awards for research, but also for enterprise, and we've just won another award this week in a league table that was set up by the Daily Mail, whatever you think of them, praising Northumbria's successes in attracting high numbers of students who are first in their family to attend university, but also the number of those students who then remain in the region and set up their own businesses or work locally. We're also leading the AHRC Creative Communities programme, which explores how culture can address regional inequality and help level up the UK. In addition to that, we've also just been awarded a £5.8 million funding bid for CHASE, which is the Centre for Health and Social Equity, which brings together academics across health, social care, education, well-being, and really the aim of CHASE is to put social equity at the heart of everything that we do as a university. So that's from everything from procurement to recruitment to academic policy and to the curricula. So I've actually joined the CHASE Academic Working Group on behalf of, well, there's a few of us who've joined on behalf of design, and one of the things that we're looking to do is to really embed social equity into a series of upcoming rewrites and curriculum rewrites. And the main interest really is how we can work together and share best practice. There's a lot of work being done around social equity within various different parts of the university, and what CHASE aims to do is bring that all together and really share best practice and show how we can embed social equity into the curriculum. And from my perspective, how to use fashion education as a force for good in the region. The fashion department at Northumbria is 68 years strong, and it's internationally recognised for innovative and hands-on industry-ready graduates. We're ranked first in the UK for graduate prospects, and 93% of our graduates are in highly skilled employment or study 15 months after graduation. We believe this is really down to the approach that we take with students, and we focus very highly on professional practice. Our practice-based students work with our industrially qualified technicians, many of whom trained at the Dewhurst factory in Stockton-upon-Tees. This is a picture, quite an old one obviously, of the Dewhurst, people working in the Dewhurst factory. They were a supplier for Marks and Spencer's amongst others. And we have this really amazing rich history and skills base in the Northeast, which is based on manufacturing. And employers really look out for our graduates because they have a strong understanding of technical processes and highly skilled making ability. Our fashion department's commitment and contribution to the local community was evidenced throughout the pandemic, when technical support staff and academics came into the university workshops through lockdown and came together to manufacture thousands of clinical gowns for NHS workers who were treating COVID-19 patients. So we really kind of have this great belief in social equity and community. Through our roles at Northumbria, we see ourselves in having a really important role in supporting social equity within fashion education, especially given the context of our region. We believe we have a responsibility to our students and the wider community to deliver an education that's of value, not just to an individual, but to the region and the industry as a whole. We think it's vital that the industry is diversified, not only in terms of race and gender, but also social diversity, that there should be a pipeline from grassroots and community groups, schools through higher education into the industry that supports and nurtures creativity amongst marginalised students, not just the privileged. As Macrobbie, Strutt and Bandinelli state, high fashion culture has historically looked to recruit from the upper middle classes. A tokenistic presence of working-class star designers such as Alexander McQueen, often patronised for their background, remains a recurring phenomenon. They go on to cite a Business of Fashion report that shows London and the South East as constituting 57% of all fashion economic activity in the UK. However, London's no longer affordable for young, creative people from working-class backgrounds who, in the not-so-distant past, have been able to make a decisive and significant contribution to the arts and culture. The leading London art and design universities have become super brands with state-of-the-art campuses. However, the cost of living and working close to them is out of reach for low-income students. As a result, the fashion industry in the UK, which is drawn largely from these institutions, retains an increasing inequality and a lack of representation from these diverse social groups. Macrobbie, Strutt and Bandinelli note that even to begin to redress some of the inequality in the creative industries as a whole would require not just free education, free higher education, but also access routes from school via youth centres and community groups, as well as well-trained and available professionals whose job it would be to implement various access in initiatives. They recommend challenging assumptions underpinning the agendas of organisations such as the British Fashion Council, and holding debate around curricula in regional universities' fashion departments to question the prevailing cultural values that inform professional codes and working practices in fashion. While the North, and perhaps the Northeast in particular, is, as Alex Niven says, defined by an enduring marginality from an imperial civilization overwhelmingly centred in London, we see opportunities to shift away from this perspective. We're seeing an increase in students and graduates who wish to remain in the Northeast, rejecting the traditional routes to London for education, internships and employments in favour of building creative communities at home. These are just a couple of fashion communication projects from a couple of months ago where students had really focused on, their whole focus had been on creating creative communities within the Northeast. So one is, this is an exhibition of photography from Anna Jeffries, who really focused on how the brutalist architecture of the Northeast kind of created a very beautiful environment. The second one is around creating opportunities for students to remain within creative communities of stylists, journalists, etc. within the Northeast. Last summer we were contacted by Bernie Yates, who's knowledge exchange leader for fashion at Central St Martin's, who was asking us to take part in a research project between the Central St Martin's knowledge exchange team in collaboration with the British Fashion Council, focusing specifically on exploring how the fashion industry can be diversified beyond London and into surrounding areas in the UK, beginning with the Northeast. They picked the Northeast because of the fact it's an area that experiences heightened deprivation in the hopes of diversifying fashion education and aspiration into the arts outside of London. Bernie's purpose was to find out what's going on up north and to see how connecting people and knowledge could pave the way to broadening options for getting into fashion and the creative arts and pipelines into industry. The team were pleasantly surprised to discover the scope of activity that was already taking place in the Northeast. These were some of their findings, some of the sort of main points from the research project that they carried out. But what happened when they came up to see us was that they met with us, and I'm going to hand over to Jen in a moment, who will tell you about TICE, which is her company, which runs, it's a grassroots organisation which works with brands and employers and education. So a lot of these recommendations that they were coming up with are things that we were already doing, but they just weren't really aware until they started having these conversations with us that this was all taking place. So Jen is an assistant professor in fashion communication at Northumbria and ultimately sees it with both sides. Their report concluded with these recommendations, which aligned with our understanding of the situation and our activities to address these challenges. There's a huge amount of other stuff that we could be talking about, but we don't have time to cover it in 15 minutes. So really we're kind of covering this second pipeline here, building the pipeline, but it also it touches on some of those other findings as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, so since 2008, I have developed a community interest company called TICE. We are actually a national award-winning Northeast born and bred company, and our aim is to support young people in their understanding of job roles, careers, skills needed for the future of the creative design and digital sectors. So this is very briefly how it all works. There are 3 pathways for youth involvement. Schools have the option to invest in all of their provision, and individual young people can also purchase projects independently. There are 5 areas that young people can go for, and I have to say that fashion and lifestyle is always the most popular. It is probably times 10 any other that young people are looking to do. So our focus is on developing projects that cater the needs of young people who are seeking fashion opportunities, particularly in the Northeast. So one example, for example, this is just a project we're developing at the moment for 2024. In a project that we're calling Digital Surreal. So it's encouraging young students to explore ways in which artificial intelligence can elevate the work of designers, artists, and other creatives. The aim is to enhance fashion garment design and prints through the inspiration of a dream of a better future, reminiscent of the influence of surrealism, which had on fashion in the past.
So it's really, really important to us that our students see fashion in completely different ways and not just through the traditional route. And we're also trying to understand that our young participants may have different interests and different aspirations. So this is why we try and focus on a multifaceted experience and encourage the students to explore everything, all sorts of perspectives, including illustration, AI, product development, art, all of that type of thing. We also seek to align our projects with local companies and local fashion mentors to support them with the understanding of their projects so they can show them that this type of work actually exists in their region. So this is how the projects are developed, because everyone always comes to us and sort of says what is in these projects for these young people. So it's mainly the three things: trend, employer consultation, and educational support. On the trend side of things, we're trying to ensure that our projects embody a forward-thinking approach, catering to the needs and interests of 14 to 15-year-olds. By providing industry-relevant and trend-driven content, we're trying to help these young individuals to build an impressive and relevant portfolio. After that, we visit so many different local, national, and international businesses, and we engage in conversations, we conduct interviews about the projects we have in mind, and then through these interactions, we explore potential partnerships and identify opportunities for collaboration. So it's not enough, obviously, to simply highlight the various themes and professions without demonstrating to young people how they can pursue these options for themselves, especially in terms of further and higher education. So despite concerns from parents about the lack of pathways in the creative industries, we encourage these interviews with lecturers and students, as well as commissioning student projects and them to develop these processes that aim to shed a light on the opportunities that are available for aspiring creatives. So this is like an example of a finished project that we give the students, and it receives, as you can see circled there, it receives a wealth of support from diverse groups of individuals. So this includes students, academics, industry professionals who give the younger ones advice and guidance and resources in a multitude of ways. It also, as well, one of the people who was on this as well, who was working at Bella Freud at the time, he did TICE when he was 13 and 14 as well, so it has this lovely circular model of people coming back into the program. So aside from the projects themselves, the other thing that the students get involved in is, this is our avenue, so TICE and Northumbria come together again. And this is really the connection to the university as well. So our aim is to expand the quality of the projects and to facilitate cross-disciplinary collaboration by organising workshops and masterclasses. And then in these events, students hailing from different schools can work together and be assisted by academic professionals to tackle different facets of their project. And these engagements allow them not only to have a university experience, but obviously cultivate multiple skills and acquire deeper understanding of the various projects that they've chosen to do. As a result of all of that, what we found is that the teachers that would accompany the students to their masterclasses or university days, they started to feel a little bit inadequate in terms of their own professional development, because they were seeing what the students were working on and they were trying to understand how they could take that back into school. So as a result, in partnership with Northumbria, we've developed teacher CPD days, and this is getting school teachers to kind of understand what trend's all about, how that features in the projects, therefore the types of things the students are doing. But we also invited in industry speakers as well to talk about what they're missing in terms of skills and things coming up from young people. And obviously what we did also was then get the design department to come in and talk to the teachers as well about what it's like to put portfolios together, and so they had a better clue kind of going forward. So in summary, through our collaboration with the university, intentions and commissioned research alongside all of the hands-on experience that we do with TICE, we have identified the various avenues that we're going to develop for the future. So the first one is to recognise the demand from Northeast students wishing to remain in their region is really increased. They're searching for prospects in the Northeast or ones that permit them to commute. It is crucial now to provide additional support for these ambitious individuals and eradicate the belief that fashion careers must commence in London. And then number 2 is enhancing the communication amongst stakeholders who share a common goal. It's imperative to promote collaborative thinking rather than just each party pursuing individual initiatives. Therefore, we've got a pressing need now to establish more visible career networks and to foster synergy and alignment amongst all stakeholders. And then finally is number 3, to continue to collaborate with school students. Parents are key, and teachers in the schools who foster confidence, to foster this confidence in pursuing creative subjects at advanced level, and to highlight the diverse opportunities that await in our region. There we go.
So really what's next in terms of how we're developing this, we will be collaborating with organisations in the northeast, with public sector, such as the Newcastle City Council, who are developing a fashion sector within the city. Our alumni are really key to this approach, and schools and community groups. Again, haven't really got time to go into all the things that we're doing there, but there's huge regional opportunities for the fashion sector that support our skills heritage and emerging specialisms, but also a responsible type of growth which will benefit everybody. So really looking to develop a different kind of fashion industry than the one that is existing in London. We find that it just feels very irrelevant to a lot of our students watching a lot of the stuff that happens in the fashion industry at the moment. So we're looking at developing a different kind of fashion industry that feels more specific to the region. And then alongside that, as I mentioned, we're working with Chase, their Centre for Health and Social Equity, to embed social equity policy into the curriculum in terms of how we are redesigning the fashion curricula and looking at the academic frameworks, including alternative pathways into education for those who aren't necessarily needing or wanting to go into full-time degree level education. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think this question of social equity and education for social equity, but also kind of education as an act of social equity, I think is also really, really quite a strong sense that I'm getting from the work that needs to be done and that you've demonstrated. So thank you so much for that. And from decentering a small kind of island, we're moving across the sea again. So we're moving back to Europe, and we're inviting. I'm going to have to get your names, but we're inviting from Spain. We're inviting Des Samparandas, Macarena, Ursula, Anna, and I think Carla's joining us too, Carla. And I'm going to really invite you all. I know you've got a slide where you're going to introduce yourselves. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to invite you all to share that and really sort of to think about why refashion, a kind of poetics of thinking about fashion. So thank you so much for joining us.
We also have a video. This one? Which one do you want to do first? Just open it and do you want to play the video first or you
no,
do the
first the slide and the trailer.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Amparo Pardo, and I'm a professor and fashion researcher in the master degree in fashion co-design and sustainability in the University of Design of Valencia, in Valencia. Today, a curiosity about me, I love teaching and I love to be in contact with nature and teaching. Anyway, and today I'm here with my students groups to present our last work about new collaborative and inclusive methodology in sustainable fashion design developed in the master. And now I'm going to present my students.
Hi, I'm Carla. I'm designer and researcher of biocompostable fashion Yeah. Maybe a curiosity about me, could be like, I'm afraid of cats. I think they are cute, but when they come, I feel scared. I don't know. Sorry.
Ursula?
My name is Ursula, and a curiosity about me might be that I'm a passionate of electronic music also, and I would love in the future to link electronic music and fashion in an interactive way.
So, hello everybody, I'm Macarena, and actually I'm from Paraguay, but I'm studying on Spain right now, so I came from the Valencia University, and I'm a fashion designer specialized in co-designing, and I don't know what can I say about me, but I think the most important thing is that I'm a dog person, and I love to spend time with my dog, and that's like my favorite thing. You too.
Okay, and I would like to start by saying that in a changing context in which the transition to the circular economy is postulated as a priority and promotes recycling, upcycling, and closed loop systems, cultivating a sustainable attitude, understanding and awareness in symbiosis with nature reinforce the idea of a future on which to lay the foundations, a new way of thinking and designing sustainable fashion and its relation with the planet. My current presentation on my works method is research that propose mapping symbiotics human-plant relationships through a dialogue that reinforce the idea of collaboration between fashion design and nature using a co-creative methodology. In this method, the participants are centered of this relation, where they were able to find themselves within nature. On the important goals of this research is exactly to reinforce these bonds in order to awaken the real conscience through nature and our planet in relate with sustainable process design. Moreover, the proposed conceptual framework establishes an ecological model of creative innovation that serves to explore the ecological boundaries of biodesign and bioarts. As I said before, the main aim is to explore these interrelationships between human and nature in a context of fashion design processes as a center of the discussions, to provide design insights and hence connections through understanding and direct engagement within a collaborative ecosystem. My argument is that the methodology proposed from to pick autobiographical narrative up and the experimentation of the participants with natural materials to intervene on waste of garment establishes a collaborative dialogue in order to create artistic space that goes furthermore of the sustainable design concepts. From my point of view, this practice, such as a work method based in life writing, as well as research method, reveals interconnection and foster a supportive and understanding dialogue with the earth. Also, life writing as an ecological research method favors effective understanding and symbiotic nature-human relationships, fostering a bio-inspiring dialogue that contributes to the future of fashion and the designer's new role as a biohacker. Now, my students are going to speak about their points of view and the methodological proposal. And okay, let's go.
Yeah. We'd like to emphasize that we've been educated within a radical nature-centered environment, and following our methodology that we will see in a few minutes, we've reached the roots of the circular design process while questioning the vertiginous production model, pressure, and other tenets of capitalism.
Our educational journey has extended beyond the already known practices such as zero waste, pattern making, upcycling, biodesign materials, and eco-friendly technologies. More important, we have explored our collective identity, our relationship with sustainable company, and create collaborative atmosphere that is important in our project. These all facts together made our vision made our vision a way to the fashioning education and bring us closer to the fashion for the future.
So the co-creation opportunities. Okay, we propose an inclusive methodology where everyone is equally represented. That's really important. Embracing a nature-centric approach coupled with the life writing methodology. This has facilitated our interpersonal connections and also the collaboration within the group. This approach, as you can see, has enabled us to engage very deeply in every project we have worked on, fostering a deep co-creative ethos.
Yeah.
And now we can see the audio video that we have prepared from the experience, the workshop into the nature. Okay.
Okay.
The ecological catastrophe allows us to find a critical reflection space where we can analyze, understand, and reflect on the concept of capitalism, which emphasizes human threat on Earth in the Anthropocene era. The climate crisis reveals a state of human dependence on abstract, invisible, and distant entities that have brought us to stop being able to interact with the real context in which we live in, Earth. It seems paradoxical that the more our collective impact on the planet increases, the individual feels less capacitated to interact with the real space. This is because nowadays most processes are automated. Today, the Anthropocene allows us to rethink the abysmal distance established between us in relation with our natural rhythms. In a context defined by the myth of acceleration, time is an imposed cultural fact. Because of this, what we call environments are composed of both artificial rhythms as well as living beings. It is above time, space, and the rational organization of these that the basis of Fordism and capitalism are fixed, transforming places into abstract locations and lived hours into usable time. Nowadays, time is translated into online life, which makes us potentially available 24 hours a day. The paradox of fast fashion and the search for modernity, along with the necessity to take care of Earth's resources in a sustainable way that includes social, economic, and environmental impacts, is a difficult dilemma, whose focus lies in the domestication and rebuilding of a green but dehumanized industry, and in a sustainable but detached from Earth model of education. This research explores the design process with a focus on extended sustainability, applying collaborative methodologies focused on human nature-centered design. This educational framework pushes students to explore and strengthen their identities, styles, and place of origin in symbiosis with nature. We understand sustainability through the change in behavior, the relations between users, and the new way of seeing and understanding the educational system in Fashion Future. Story and writing as a methodology is centered on the narration of life through nature and its connection with fashion. We deepen on the identity of participants and their life experiences, emotions and connections with the environment as a vehicle of expression and elevation of the superior self to connect with oneself.
Bueno, esta es la foto que elegí y en realidad lo que me llamó la atención y la razón por la cual en verdad la escogí es por este pequeño mural que hay ahí. A ver. Que son unos pájaros. O bueno, yo los veo como unos pájaros. Nada, eso es como esa libertad, como respirar también, no sé, el cielo muy azul me da como esto de abrir las alas y volar.
Sabe que los colores, la estética es como increíble. Los flores son como un poquito como hoy también. Los colores me encanta mucho el amarillo y el rosa con el suelo también, el material.
Me gusta fijarme en este tipo de cosas que te vas encontrando muchas veces, como que vas como mirando pero sin ver, que es diferente, ¿no? Y entonces te pierdes estas cosas tan bonitas y me gusta eso, y además que me encantan las flores.
Y la he cogido porque, no sé, me ha representado como las sensaciones, un poco como me siento ahora en general.
Ahogada.
En este periodo de la vida. Un poco.
Ahogada. Esperemos que hoy no.
Es como que la imagen está en movimiento y puede ser el lugar que vos quieras, en el momento en el que vos quieras, ¿verdad? Tipo, pero para mí principalmente creo que significa como movimiento, ¿verdad? Estar en constante movimiento, estar en constante transición, como que de un lugar a otro, de una etapa a otra, yo soy muy fan de la mejora continua y es algo que cuesta un poco, ¿verdad? Pero que me parece que esa imagen representa, ¿no?
The practice of extending oneself and connecting with the natural environment through the actions of bioart as performative experiences brings us to a grander ecological comprehension, where the direct experience becomes our own language for interior expression, comprehension, and liberation.
Lo que le dije a mi niña fue: confía en ti. que eres suficiente y no hay que demostrarle nada a nadie, que está bien equivocarse y que lo perfecto es enemigo de lo bueno. Tú solo vive y sé. Como que toda la vida me he cargado como de un montón de cosas, de tratar de ser mejor y mejor y mejor. Y muchas veces es esa misma búsqueda de la perfección que me ha como paralizado para justamente no hacer nada de lo que realmente quiero. Trataba eso de ser perfecta para, no sé, para mis papás, para mis amigos, para la familia, para el otro. Y en realidad es que no lo necesitas. Y no hay necesidad porque en la imperfección está como lo más bonito.
¿Qué le dijiste a tu niña?
De respirar, de estar tranquila y de ser presente en el momento. Que para mí los animales son como puro, que el amor que un animal que de tipo como cerdo aparentemente, que son muy guay con la gente. Son como las dos combinaciones.
Estábamos en mi casa de cuando era pequeña y nada, le dije como que ella encontraría el cariño que necesita, que hay que tener paciencia y que la vida es muy bonita. Cuando mi niña a lo mejor no se paraba a fijar, porque a ver, es una niña, no se para a mirar ciertas cosas y no ve como a lo mejor esa belleza, va desde la inocencia y no ve más allá.
Pues con la niña como que... Es que ahora me da más...
No.
Como que la he visto y he pensado que como cuando somos pequeños como que no disfrutamos de la inocencia que tenemos y somos más felices y como que luego cuando crecemos a lo mejor nos preocupamos por cosas que no tienen importancia porque hemos perdido como esa mentalidad inocente, por así decirlo.
¿Y qué le dijiste?
Pues que no se preocupara y que no perdiera pues como la felicidad no constante pero como primitiva, por así decirlo.
Cuando era chiquitita nos solíamos ir a un lugar así. Mi abuelo tenía una casa y que terminaba en un cerro y vos te subías al cerro, tipo así, era esto, ¿verdad? Y era como subirse acá también porque era como que súper trambólico y te podías caer y era así súper aventurero. Y me hizo acordar de eso porque siempre que yo era chiquitita yo miraba y decía, o sea, no sé, me sentía como que grande, como que, no sé, aventurera porque me iba de un lugar a otro. Soy un poco ansiosa, ¿verdad? Pero es como que me emociona eso de que está por venir.
Por eso has cogido esta foto. Me encanta el olor y me encanta... Siempre te decía, no te manches, ten cuidado porque después no se va. Pues yo quiero mancharme, ¿no? Quiero mancharme porque para mí mi refugio es mi libertad y es mi niña interior y es donde mejor estoy y donde quisiera estar siempre, ¿no? Por ejemplo, a mí me encantan me encanta todo lo que es pues el tocar, la arcilla, lo manual, ¿no? Y para mí es muy chulo poder tocar la tierra, porque bueno, ya lo he dicho antes. Entonces creo que tenéis que quitaros todos los prejuicios y ser libres y conectar pues eso, con la naturaleza, con vosotras.
Fashion writing as a creative method has an integrated, empathic and suggestive component that challenges academic spaces and gives us a sustainable, holistic, metaphysic and emotive view on fashion. The participants made contact with their identities through the direct and spiritual relation they experience in the act. five senses become the primary vehicle of the experience. Nature is the barrier-inspiring scene, the place that brings life to the atmosphere, the birth of emotions, and the awakening of a larger conscience. The ritual is the scenography that empowers the senses, power of connection and concentration. Meditation is distancing oneself from that which is terrestrial and elevating your spirit through the canalization of energy and connections with the medium. Images are instruments of support that provide a nexus of union between the sensorial experience and that which is perceived. They allow them to reflect and generate thoughts tied to the sensorial experience. Writing helps them sensitize and concrete the tale of the experience. Dialogue is the verbalization of feelings, the reveal of emotions and sensations, the exposure of the self, contact and connection with the group. The natural materials are the tools that help them express themselves, acting upon the garments and bringing out of them their feelings and emotions. The garment allows them to express themselves and manifest their psychic and emotional state, embedding it with meanings and transforming it into a symbol of identity, an expression of bioart. In the center of a human and ecological catastrophe, art and design, in unison with nature, build an alternate frame that boosts inspiration and the inclusive relations of human with nature. The exchange, empathy, creativity, transcendence, and the bond with others and with history are intrinsic elements of the artistic practice that become vital for humanity and for the planet's regeneration. Waste becomes an element of poetic design, an element of a new creative and inspirational genesis, a modern relic, and a favorite item. The passage of time is utopic, and so is the endless rebirth of garments that never die.
As we saw in the video, what we think is when you co-create, you're not losing yourself. You are like, wait a moment, look at you, and know better you, and then you collaborate, make a co-identity that bring us better projects, and also there is like a table where everyone have a chair in the middle of the nature.
Yeah, and finally I want to suggest that, from my opinion, to understand the sustainability to design fashion in sustainable way is more important to start creating a consciousness to the user designing with him. To design into a class in a sustainable way is more difficult if you haven't a previous contact with the nature, because fashion design is not only designed for apply ecological techniques such as design for disassemble, modulating zero waste partner, upcycling or using bio-based material, etc. In my opinion, design for the nature is today design with the nature itself, touching it, sensing it, listening to it, and intervening on it as a center of human design. This way of understanding the sustainability fashion design is collaborative model to create and find innovative ideas and to improve the consumers' in order to challenge the capitalist system, regenerating the method of teach in design. And the garment is not a product of use and throw away, but it's a symbolic product that could be seen as eternal product. And in conclusion, its method presents to rebirth the values on the products that we have and buy daily, because are just these values that the capitalist system has taken from us. In conclusion, in fashion design, the concept of psychological obsolescence is more important than planet obsolescence, because the true values in a garment's challenges their material and the decay of this over the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. For a moment, I think we all forgot we were in Berlin and we were somewhere in Spain, so thank you for that immersive opportunity to explore. Thank you so much. And then I think we're just going to wrap up the afternoon with one more paper exchange. And it's Benjamin Wild, and really sort of thinking about this space between defashion and decolonize, and sort of these sort of, again, sort of very polemic words, and I think we've got a presentation that's really going to topple some of those spaces, and then we'll have some time at the end. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. The knowledge or the thing that you may not immediately know of me when Eric asked me to ponder this is that I am colorblind. So if we're thinking about fashion, we tend to think about that obviously as a visual language. So this morning when we were commenting on the graphics that are used for this two-day event, I was sort of wondering whether what I am seeing is the same as what you are seeing. What I want to talk about this afternoon, though, is not so much a visual language, but a written one. Here, though, are those visuals that I was just talking about. And I think some of the remarks that I want to make do kind of, at least to me, kind of act as or pick up on some of the points that have been made through these presentations this afternoon, because they have been thinking in various ways about connectivity or reconnecting, whether that's regional, national, or international, also thinking about connectivity through cultures. And of course, one of the ways that we explore that is through language. And also, I suppose, in thinking about today's talk or the remarks that I want to make, they were very much framed by the discussion that Renata and Sandra Neeson had in the podcast. So the sort of pre-conference discussion, some of the sort of inflections, some of the ideas that I want to pose and share have changed as a consequence of my listening to that. So if you haven't listened to it, going back to that or going to it for the first time might help to contextualize what I'm saying. So I want to think about language. I want particularly to think about this idea of decolonization and degrowth. And to begin, I suppose, by just sort of setting the scene and what are sort of the ideas that are dancing through my mind. It seems that with a lot of the social, political, economic upheavals that we've been confronted with in recent years, that in various spaces we are reconnecting, we are reimagining what some of the terms, some of the concepts that might define our presence might be. Just last week, for example, at the G20 summit, various headlines in newspapers about sort of Modi here, Prime Minister of India, appearing in front of the name of his country, not as India as we may have expected, but as Bharat, and discussions there about colonialism and the extent to which a word, the name of a country, might need to be changed to reflect new experiences, might need to change to reflect new pathways. in light of the Russia and Ukraine war, again, how we think about Kiev, how that pronunciation, the name that we use, particularly in an Anglophone context, has changed. You may also be familiar with this text that came out, I think, in 2022, largely in response to the pandemic by Dominique Khalifa, and really, I suppose, engaging in this book with this idea of how there's this almost human compulsion to classify, to name, to define. And often we do that, particularly as scholars, as academics, in a belief that we are seeking to clarify, seeking to understand. But I suppose what I want to try and unpick a little bit in my remarks today is to what extent that process can also confound, and to what extent it can also cause us to sort of stumble. If they're then, I suppose, some of the sort of wider ideas and wider thoughts that are going through my mind at the moment, and what I'm sharing with my students in our discussions, I suppose a more immediate frame in light of the pandemic particularly is this prevalence of D being added as a prefix to many words, either for the first time or D reappearing. So we might be thinking, obviously we've heard it in this morning's lecture, we've heard it again throughout the presentations today, of a decentralization, of a decolonization, of degrowth. We might think more broadly about deterritorialization, if I can even say it. As I said, some of these are terms that we have encountered. They're not particularly recent, but more recently we are seeing them perhaps invested with different meanings. And this was something that I was grappling with in a book that I've just finished working with, that I don't want to go into in too much detail. There's a kind of a little bit of a blurb there. But my engagement, if you like, with a lot of these discussions is as a historian. More specifically as a medieval historian. So in that sense I might be something of an interloper in these discussions. But what I've always found very interesting as a medieval historian is we think about concepts like feudalism, or we might talk about villeinage. And yet these are terms that we as scholars use, but if we were to go back to that period where the people were talking a very different language, the majority of the population would have been illiterate. What is the virtue of some of these analytic terms if we're applying them to people that wouldn't have readily understood them? And so, as much as we might be grappling with language, with terms, decolonization, degrowth, defashion, that focus on our present and looking forward, I think for me as a historian, it's really important also to look back and think about the histories of these words, and the weight that they bear in our present and going into the future. And this phrase, a linguistic trajectory, is from Sandra Neeson in that discussion, that pre-conference discussion that she had with Renata. So I see myself very much on this linguistic trajectory, and I think it is important for us within fashion education as a discipline that is still relatively under-theorized, is still in some ways sort of finding its feet, and as we've heard throughout today, the great interdisciplinarity of fashion provides a wealth of perspectives, but it can also mean that in terms of a language that talks to what we are interested in and what we are doing can be quite perhaps elusive to find. So I think to be more explicit perhaps in our own work and practice and with our students about those linguistic trajectories might perhaps be helpful. And I think that's particularly pertinent because when I was working on this book, and as we've heard really throughout today, there is this persistence of Anglophone terms and Anglophone concepts. Most of these terms, for example, again in an Anglophone context, we would use, we hear spoken about, but they were all terms that were either coined or redefined in the crucible of empire during the 18th and 19th century. Civilization is a word that is created in the 19th century. Homosexuality is coined in 1868, first published in 1869. Heterosexuality, 1871. Some of these terms, class, pre-existed that, probably sort of early 18th century, but given new meaning during the experience, particularly, as I said, of empire during the 19th century, when there was that perceived imperative from European powers to define themselves and to distinguish themselves from those over which they were already ruling or establishing further control, to define themselves, to protect themselves as they perceived it. And so grappling with these words is obviously something we are still doing today. And again, some of these words, if we take gender, for example, very active in terms of meanings and how they're changing even in recent months. But alongside those words, we also have disciplines that were, again, created during the 19th century. So I guess my point here is that when we're thinking about words that we use in our present and how we might put new inflections upon them, being cognizant of where they've come from and how they've been used is important. And here again, I'm thinking of something Sandra Neeson says in her conversation with Renata, that these are words to struggle with. They are ways of being, they are ways of thinking, they are ways of shifting thought. And I think for me, what was particularly powerful watching the video and that idea of what you would have told your younger self, we all, as individuals but as groups, I suppose, labor with the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we use to legitimate our actions because we've grown up with them and therefore they must be true. But also the stories that we can reforge, that we can create, I suppose, new chapters. Again, through words here, but as we've seen through some of the presentations today, through visual or practical action. So with that, I suppose, as a context, what I just want to think about in, if you like, the sort of the second part of my discussion is the term decolonization. And when I think about these terms with my students, or when I'm just thinking them through for myself, I particularly like Google's Ngram Viewer. Now, I'm not entirely sure how the information for this is derived. What it purports to show from 1500 to 2019 is the instance that this word, decolonization, has appeared in printed texts. Now, again, how large that sample is, I think we have to assume there'll be some things that are missed, but it gives us, I think, a sort of ballpark idea of the frequency, as I said, only within published texts, that this term is used. It's possibly not surprising that the term spikes at the beginning of the 1940s. This is a period where the Second World War in Europe is ending and where decolonization, we might suppose, begins in a more formal sense with the partition of India in 1947. But we can clearly see that there is a pronounced spike in this word as we enter the late 20th and early 21st century. Okay. And I think for me, again, as a historian, that's quite interesting, because although we're using this same term over this long chronology, the pattern, the trajectories that this term has been on would, to me at least, presuppose that that meaning has not maintained stability. And I think it's interesting, again, just in this afternoon session, we might be using degrowth, the same term, but how we're each interpreting that within our different environments, within our different circumstances, I think is quite interesting. I think for me, as a historian, what I would also remark is that the way particularly that many of us might be conceiving of decolonization is again quite different to how it may have been used in 1940. Certainly when I was a student, when I first encountered the term decolonization, it was very much presented to me as being something like this. And again, these are my words, so I'm conscious that there may be differences of understanding. You may, as I said, have chosen different words to define. But decolonization, where an imperial power relinquishes its direct governance over another country, a colony, and a process that begins, as I said, more formally, if we're thinking, with the British Empire in 1947. If that's one way that we could interpret decolonization, though, we could perhaps also think of another, where, from the first example, that country, having been formally colonized, then seeks to develop or to renew independent practices and structures, be they economic, political, or social. But I would suggest that both of those two definitions, the extent to which we understand them, engage with them, recognize them, is probably quite different to how, when we were hearing about decolonization this morning, we may have been engaging with that term, which might align a little bit more with this one, where we're thinking of a movement whereby the West, which I put in inverted commas because we're not talking about a unified geographical space, but where the West gives more space, physical or figurative, to learn of the experiences of others, chiefly people, typically marginalized by its practices and structures, and that's often conflated with ideas of modernity. We might say that there are other definitions, there are other nuances that I haven't included, but to me there's a clear trajectory of this term, and perhaps a little crude, but if we go back to that engram viewer, we might suggest that those terms could be placed onto this chronology as follows. So in the 1940s, we're talking about a European power sort of seceding control. For number two, we're maybe thinking about that country reasserting, discovering, exploring its identities. And in three, we're maybe sort of beginning to grapple with decolonization as this movement. As I said, for me, that's really important. Again, the extent to which there's an agreement or disagreement, but I think that importance of understanding the trajectory of this term, where it has come from, I think is really important. Not least because I think when we're thinking about some of the terms, Sandra's idea of defashion, again, it's quite interesting when she was having that interview with Renata, that she says it's a term that she's not wholly happy with herself. Or when this morning Amanda was talking about degrowth, again, she expressed some surprise at how the term had caught on, perhaps as quickly as it had, and is now advocating perhaps alongside degrowth that we also talk about commons. So again, to what extent these words maybe serve an initial purpose and then another word needs to take their place, or again, maybe definitions do need to shift again. Maybe if I were giving this talk in 5 years' time, the trajectory would be different, and I'd add a fourth, for a different term or phrase. And here we have, as I said, degrowth, which we're talking about this morning. I think it's also interesting, and again, it's skewed, I suppose, as a part of the way that Google is assembling this information. But these trajectories, that spark in degrowth, if we go back, that spark, as I said, from the late 20th century, early 21st century decolonization very much reflects Western concerns, Western priorities, Western guilt, for example. And again, I think it was an interesting point that Sandra was making towards the end of her presentation when we use the word sustainability. To what extent is that still bound up? However much we want that word to be a vehicle and the concept to be a means to challenge the way that we currently operate and think, to what extent does it nonetheless sort of perpetuate thinking and ideas that we might wish to overturn and challenge? So I suppose then what I'm asking us to think about, and I should have said right at the outset that this is a kind of insight into the sort of messiness of my mind and some of the kind of terms and ideas that I'm grappling with. So I pose questions rather than any answers. But if we think about that idea of the D prefix, which, as I said, we're perhaps encountering a little bit more, when we use a D prefix, or when we sort of invoke any other kind of word or concept that might already exist, how far are we changing that word, intentionally or unintentionally? When we think about, and when we've spoken about degrowth over the course of today, there has been, I think, a sense of this being very sort of positive and purposeful, although again I think it was interesting in the first panel that there was a sense of how the term degrowth isn't actually used by certain educators with their students for how the word might be perceived or not understood. So what's the unintentional consequence of these words that we're using? Again, how far are we aware of these words, their concepts, histories? And again, the choices that we're making in using them, where we use them, which people. And for me, I think bringing both of those together, to what extent do these words that we're then using assault, or to what extent do they affirm the sort of citadels of orthodoxy? I think the desire, the challenge, is that they are going to assault, they are going to destabilize some of our current ideas and assumptions. But I think if we reflect on the first two, we might perhaps be surprised ourselves that at the same time they are also acting to affirm. So there I want to kind of stop, because I hope that we can pick up some of these ideas in discussion. And as I said, I wanted to pose ideas and questions rather than be in any way conclusive. What I did want to sort of finally share, and I think appropriate with various people being in the room, is that there is a course that's being organised by the Research Collective for Decoloniality and Fashion by various colleagues in the room, so Angela and Erica, from the 5th of October, a 6-week online course that you are very welcome to participate in and join. I've got some information, and obviously Angela, do you want to give us away so people can see who you are, can kind of and talk with us, and we can sort of share that information. But it is a course that you can participate in. As I said, the online registration is open. So final plug, shameless, but I do have something of a captive audience. There I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think this question of the language that we use and the power of that language, I think is incredibly important. I do want us to be able to have a little bit of a conversation. There's a small group of us, so I'm going to invite that Sherlyn and Felice and Jenny and Gail and the group of you, maybe you could just move your chairs a little bit around this way, and then we could just invite you to be a little bit closer. We're a very small, intimate group. I think in the fairness of this moment is to allow the floor first to those of you that have been listening. If you want to have, so we're really a small group. So if I can get a sense of anybody who would like to start with a comment or a question or an engagement. Anybody with a burning sort of need to? Angela, do you want to say something? I think your responses to add and contribute to what we've witnessed, I think, is really also part of this process. Yeah.
Do you want me to use this? Really? Oh my goodness. Oh right. No, so I have a question. So first of all, thank you so very much for all the amazing presentations. What I always really like is how the presentations talk to each other. You know, I don't know how much that is curated or not, but it always gives this really nice, I don't know. But yeah, I would like to, and I'm not going to remember all the names, but the group or the collective from Spain. I mean, I thought it was so incredibly brave, I don't know if that's the word, but you know, to also film it and share it with us. So first of all, thank you so much for showing an incredible, I think, personal and vulnerable experience. And so I was sitting next to Pierre-Antoine, and we were wondering, so besides the incredible, I think, powerful experience for yourselves to put yourselves out there and to go through that is what the outcome is. I don't think if it's necessarily very important, but maybe I'm wrong. So I don't know if you can call them the garments that you, or at least the objects that you created through that process, does that have a purpose? Is that then, I don't know, in the end, the design?
I think what we saw in the video were a part of our first steps to know ourselves and also to know each other. And later, what we do in another projects, collaborating with some companies, for example, a jeans company from Spain, we made because we know already each other, then we know our identity, and what we do were to
similar methodological, divided in different steps, with the same.
The structuring the identity of the company, the structuring our identity,
to create a co-identity of the group is very important.
Yeah.
Okay,
Then when we have this identity that all of us are represented, we start working and design a fashion throwaways collection that are inspired in the history of this village where is this company. We're a nice project. We made another projects with other companies too.
So the difference is that we use our co-identity to create. We don't follow trends, or we don't go like doing what everybody's doing. So we follow our our core and the work between us.
And also that is important to highlight is that anyone is more important than other. Or personality, the company, and the nature. Everyone are the same level.
Everyone is equally represented as well.
But to synthesize everything that my partners have said, in this experience, the garment that we created wasn't the most important thing, but it was the connection with nature, reflected on that, and to know each other deeply without barely knowing each other, because the scholar year had started like a month before. So it was very important to then create together in the later projects in a more comfortable space.
And what we want to show too is that maybe sometimes the designers are so afraid to collaborate because feel like they are not represented in this work. With our experience, we saw like I feel represented. We have also to learn to say no and yes to things, but at the end everything is like everyone were represented. And the other part that we maybe didn't explain right now is like we use new technologies to make these garments. That is also important, like zero waste, also some laser technology that are that follow us or behavior or mind, like
Thank you.
Thank you. I also think that it offers such a rich space for students to grow and to feel nurtured. And I'm very aware of educational institutions that aren't doing that. So I think if I go back to the Northumbria examples that you created and the kind of spaces that you're creating, I think that as well. So I think looking after students in a very, very different kind of way, and I think that's very important to this that we're doing. So I'm curious where fashion in that relation to the student, defashion as care, maybe, or defashion as so, we didn't quite sort of touch on the negative and the positive. So
to the point that was made in the discussion this morning about how some of these terms can seem quite difficult for students to engage with, to what extent some of these more experiential practices could be a way in to make them seem more engaging, or at least to create a space where discussion seems more open. Yeah.
The constructive the identities for reconstructing the identities in the growth is so important in this methodology to work at the future of the fashion. I don't know.
That also, that as a point that we didn't talk about, is right now in the industry we totally forget that the fashion is also an art, and when you work in that way you can stop create the creativity, like refresh it, come back to the reality that fashion is art, and we have to highlight that part too. I don't know.
And I was going to maybe just bring the question to Sherlyn and Felice. The work that you've been doing, and I mean, I followed some of your work from 10, 15 years ago around Dresses Disaster, and this kind of, what is the long-term trajectory of students engaging in this kind of creative praxis over time that you may have noticed? Because now these students from 10 years ago, they're in the industry, and what is that long term of the student work?
Thank you for remembering that, because it's the project is a kind of revisited edition of what we did in 2007 for European Design Academy Conference, Design Against Disaster Conference, and at the time that we didn't have a concrete problem like earthquake, but it was more conceptual, and it was more pedagogical kind of start. But students really like it, responding it, and that and going beyond their daily problems, but thinking the what we refer as risk society as a kind of more international, in the international frame, and referring to different cultures. And it was very, that what we exhibited in Utrecht Design Biennale, that one, and we could luckily present it to now King Charles, and he came to Turkey, and hence we made a fashion show to him that they were interested in that. And after that, I never thought about, my plans were completely revisiting circularity in a more, from the aspect of biodiversity this year, with collaborating with the industry, but earthquake happened and changed everything in Turkey. So we couldn't keep silence to that, and with that thing, taking that, of course, the students couldn't respond physically or socially by their own, individually. We all help, we all work, but what they could do and what we could do together, what we can think together to develop a kind of more empathic system, in addition to the sustainability, circularity, the ethical aspect, and how we can visit these concepts in the frame of a real concrete problem, was more, of course, I think more responsive, but the generations were different. I have to say that. The generation now they are in Turkey especially, they are having less, they are feeling less responsibility to social problems, but they are more caring about their individual comforts. So we could also, we also push them to, and just let's do something and yeah, let's put your hands on the on the subject. And I don't know if I could answer your questions.
I think you're raising another point.
But I see this as a kind of course, it doesn't go to anywhere. That it's different than the projects what we do with the industry. But the industry is learning from us. We are learning from industry, and they are applying the academic methodologies that we are developing, and it's more concrete. Economically, it's also more. But the last project was more pedagogical and more maybe conceptual. I have to say, but I really wanted to, make this comparative paradigm, with how we change the perspective.
I have a question. Do you have all of you in your degrees or students? I mean, in design student, do you have any subject that talk about philosophy or make any reflection?
For example, we have a fashion theory course that I teach as well. They find it very challenging, I have to say. That's reading theory. But yeah, it's kind of mental exercise for them, I think.
But I think you were saying philosophy. Yeah. And you're saying theory, no?
Yeah, it's included philosophy, sociology, and we are revisiting philosophy, sociology, anthropology, many aspects, and the development of body and clothing in regards to society, beyond fashion.
Yeah, I mean, my experience would be that in terms of the sort of the fashion design, you tend to find, or at least as in my experience, that you have the practical element of fashion is often decoupled from the more theoretical. They're sort of separate beasts. So you have these discrete contextualization courses, which may be mandatory, may be optional, but they tend to run in parallel rather than being part of the same kind of unit or the same brief or something like that. And I think for me at least, the sort of take home from today is the necessity of them being much more symbiotic. I mean, that is happening, but I think that's the degree to which the norm of it being symbiotic, I think is only quite recent, I think.
I mean, of course, when you give students as theory, they take it as theory. But when it comes to interpret into design, it's always challenging, and they create a gap in between. How can I reflect this to my design practice? So I think the reason we would like to especially give some clues about the process and briefs in our presentation was we have to make some kind of translation to students. How we can actually create a pulse to connect in their minds that with the concept, with the creative act. So that's something that you also want to know.
I'm very aware at the time because I think there are other panels or other workshops or another provocation that we're meant to be joining, and I'm very aware that, I mean, maybe also we didn't come back to Northumbria, but knowing this sometimes what has happened and happening at margins in the global south, spaces of precariety, is not away from us. It's actually ahead of the world. And if we're sort of thinking of Sandra's kind of call to like radical action, we need to be listening to these lessons that we've just been shared. So from decentered in learning outside of the institution, from dealing with radical questions.
That's why I have to just say one thing to coming back to your definition of, I mean, I know these words are being used a lot, whether it's decolonization, decoloniality, coloniality, modernity. But one thing that I think is very, very important to keep in mind, and I'm speaking on behalf of other people that have this incredible knowledge, so it's not mine,
But so what is very important is that decolonizing or colonizing is part of the Western episteme, and that coloniality and decoloniality is not part. So that is from the global South. And so I think it's very sensitive when we, especially from the global North, are mixing these terms up.
We had a long conversation with you when we met first time through Zoom or something like that. It's before Zoom probably, and you were expressing not the word decolonizing, but you were expressing a word like that, as I remember, non-Eurocentric at that time. So even your community, which I appreciate, that the definition of the same argument also changed. By time that you grabbed the concept of decolonialization. Decolonialism, that I think which makes more probably universal the concept that it's switched into a kind of more maybe universal, and also this global north, global south is these concepts were also created very power oriented, kind of coming from a very power oriented.
I think we might need to leave the answers to some of those questions to the course that's up there. But absolutely, I think that this question of language, this question of the words that we use, this question of translation of these words, this question of who the
epistemology is very important.
Absolutely, the knowledge as we carry, the knowledge as we listen to, and so maybe this afternoon has just been really an important introduction to that. But I do need to end because we have to go to another event. Thank you so much.